Hey CDA, and welcome back to Oddsparks, where we have now completed the entire map, or at least we explored it, with the exception of this little cave. So I'm actually wondering, when will we get inside of there? We're close to the end of the game, because we're now at tier 9, and as you can see, there's still a fair few quests there, and for some reason the game decided this was the perfect time to give me a tier 10, so not 9, 10, hostility tutorial, which apparently is going to allow me to turn on a hostility overlay. That doesn't sound very friendly. I need to do this in the village management, but I actually don't have anything to do that. So I don't know. This seems a little bit over enthusiastic for the moment. So we're gonna have to focus on an actual quest first. Okay, so there's a couple of things to note. First of all, I need 2,500 copper ingots apparently for the next tier expansion for my village, so I'm gonna have to start working on that one for sure. And then on top of that, a lot of these quests apparently need copper seeds, and we do have a botany quest to do exactly this. It's just gonna take me some volcanic soil and copper ore to turn in, and then I can start making those things, so that seems like the logical place to start. Anyway, so how many of these copper ingots do I already have? Well, about 400 or 450 of them, and I need how many? 2,500? Yeah, we're gonna have to do something about this for sure. So when one location of copper ore is not really producing enough anymore, mostly because some of these resources have been running low, you just add in a secondary one to do the same thing. I'm also going to need that copper ore and volcanic soil, of course, to unlock the copper seed germination. And apparently we also need copper ore and volcanic soil to make those things. So I'm gonna see if this is once again one of those infinite loops that we can make, because if that is the case, copper ore is going to be extremely easy. Oh, well, it seems the answer is no, because we need 20 copper ore to run this 10 times to make the 20 copper seeds. But if we take this copper seeds and we turn them into the plant extractor, 20 of these things will only give us 10 copper ore, because this is a 2-to-1 ratio. So we are actually losing out on copper ore while making this. So that's not going to be the easy solution I was hoping for. So I guess we're making the seeds the hard way, and because I just set up a new supply line for the copper ore anyway, we might as well start using it. Alright, so there we go. We have a greenhouse set up now to start making these things, and actually I'm just wondering, I can heat this up to speed this up a little bit as well. Might as well make use of all of those heaters and stuff that we have available now. So there we go. And now this should be working at 150%. It's still not fast, but at least it's a little bit faster than it used to be. What is interesting, however, is the fact that we can use the copper seeds to turn in this quest, and then apparently we can melt the copper seeds directly into ingots. And considering it was a 1-to-1 ratio to make copper seeds out of ingots, that also means that this is a far more efficient way to make these ingots than what we have been doing so far. Because if you smelt them straight up, you are going to need, I think it's 3 of them. Let me double check. We can check over here. Yeah, so we need 3 ore to make 1 ingot. But if we make the seeds first, we are gonna have to add in some of that volcanic soil, but then we can make 3 times as many ingots out of 1 single ore. Well, the monument upgrades this time around are going to be pretty easy, because I already got a copper cutting just from one of the pedestals in town. That's going to unlock another big slot to my inventory, so, you know, that is always useful. And I also found some of these stone blocks just laying around in a couple of those boxes, and that's going to allow me to have another spark layout. Now, the last remaining tier 1 village monument upgrade is going to be for the sparks. So we have a freezing spark and a burning spark. Now let me see, I think, yeah, right over here is the, no, actually that's not the one. Here, there we go. This is the burning spark next to my initial ore location, and then over here somewhere we have the freezing spark already, which is right next to where my arboretum is. So let's go pick those 2 up. Well, these burning and freezing sparks do exactly what you think they would do. One of them freezes the area around it and one of them heats it up, so really like this one actually. But anyway, let's go turn them into the divine, whatever we're calling him, the divine alchemist, I think. And we're also going to need some stellar leaves. When we have those, we need some fire shrooms and some drill bits. We are already producing all of those, so all we need to do is go and deliver. And speaking about turning in, we actually have the production required to turn in 4 of our 5 quests. So we can turn in the Metal Spark R&D, we have the materials for both the botanical quest, because basically all we needed to do that is a lot of copper seeds, and the temperature control, which I assume is some sort of automation we can use for our heating and cooling, is something that just requires some enemy items that are dropped. So I'm gonna turn in all of those and then see where we go next. Well, first and foremost, this will allow me to unlock machine range 9, so we have that available to us now, and that also means that I think, yep, we cleared out tier 9 of the monument. So that means we only have tier 10 left, which apparently is going to require something that is called a corrupted ether, but also a stone block to unlock the hostility overlay, the tutorial that I already got at the beginning of tier 9. Now, I actually have some of these stone blocks, I think, so let's go and unlock this one. And yeah, I was right, I had some of that in my bank, so let's go unlock the hostility overlay. And let's see, you have unlocked the hostility overlay. The overlay indicates that an area's danger level and whether it's hostile territory. Building in hostile territory will attract enemies to attack your base. Well, that's new. Okay. So what do we need to do to activate that? Wait. Oh. Temperature overlay, hostility overlay. Well, none of this is hostile, which makes sense considering we are in town. Now, let's teleport, say, to the icy places. Let's turn that back on. Okay, so I am starting to wonder where the actual hostility will be coming from, but at least it doesn't mean that my bases are suddenly going to get attacked, because that would be horrible. Anyway, back to the basic quest. So in order to complete tier 9 and, well, at least to complete the village expansion of that, we are going to need copper ingots that I have already been working on, as you can see. We also need copper sap and ether segments, and those are the new quests we have available right now. So we can now start making copper cuttings. I'll look into how we actually do that in a second. We just need to make one, so that's really nice, and then we'll unlock some other recipes again to make some more copper. Now, hopefully one of these combinations will turn into kind of an infinite loop, or at least a very efficient loop, so that means we can scale up the copper production a little bit, because, 2,500 copper ingots will still take some time, even though, as you can see, we're already 1/3 in. And then in order to make the ether segments, I assume that's what this is, so we are going to need to grow some ether apples. And again, we just need to grow one, and then we can start cutting them to pieces, apparently. Now, that's all nice, but in order to make those ether apples, we're going to need to complete this quest. Luckily, this, again, only requires things we already have. So we need some more fire shroom clusters, we need some stellar leaves, and we need some ether seeds. Now, at this point, I think it makes sense to not rely on just the stuff I already have, but actually scale that up a little bit and start making a new facility. And I might not need to care as much about placing them in a warm or hot location, but just maybe a centralized location, so we can combine all of these things. Because as you can see, we need both fire shroom clusters and stellar leaves in order to make whatever this is. And then that in combination with the aether seed that we can also already produce, we need to start making these apples. So basically I need all 3 of these things to make the apples, so it makes sense to somehow combine that in a centralized location if we can. Now, let me go through the actual production chain that we need to do that and see what I can come up with. Okay, so now let me try to play the game again as intended, at least I assume that's how it's intended, and make a completely automated production chain, because I have been carrying stuff back and forth for the last couple of episodes, and honestly it doesn't take that much time, but at this point we need to combine so many things, I think that no longer makes sense. Now, the main problem I have when looking at the recipes is the fact that we need volcanic soil in order to make stellar leaves. I don't have any reliable way, well, that's not completely true, but I don't really have a easy, reliable way to make volcanic soil, because the only recipe I have to produce this is from these geodes, and the only way to get these geodes is making them out of a geode cluster. We're gonna get a whole lot of other stuff that we don't really need for anything as well. But yeah, in order to make these geode clusters, we need lava caps and coral seeds, and of course these are part of the production chains that we need to have anyway. At least the lava caps are part of the fire shroom cluster ones that we also need. So I guess I'm just gonna have to completely automate the geode cluster production in order to get a reliable source of volcanic soil, and we'll take it from there.
One eternity later.
Well, this is TDA from the future, and long story short, it's really not worth automating everything. And when I say that, what I mean is you could, and well, it's gonna be a lot of work. But in the end, just varying things back and forth manually is just way more efficient, mostly because it will take you so long to set up everything. Now, there's a couple of things that I did set up that I think is worth it, but after a couple of hours of experiment, I was like, yeah, this is not going to work. So what I did do is make sure I extended my rail network a little bit so I can easily teleport everywhere. But I'm actually not really transporting stuff through this rail network. What I've done instead is I've started to do what I've also done, for example, a couple of times in Satisfactory. I just set up these manual stations where I'm producing stuff, and then every once in a while, I pick something that needs to come from a distance. So, for example, over here, I need fire shroom clusters, which, by the way, I'm also producing here. So, you know, these can already go in here. But I'm also producing these at a couple of other locations, so these are just being ferried in. But other than that, yeah, I'm just putting things in here manually, and that seems like a very stupid thing to do when it comes to an automation game. But I am pretty much confident that this is going to be shaving many hours of my gameplay towards the end game, just because this is so much more efficient to just, you know, just grab like a whole inventory full of this stuff. And once you do, then you can teleport, let's say, to my Arboretum that is all the way here up in the corner. And yeah, sure, that takes me, you know, maybe a minute or so to do. But you have so much inventory that you can carry hundreds of stuff. And that's not even counting the super slots that I have that could stack up to 400 of each resource. And yeah, then you just walk over here. Put these things in the box where they need to go, and there you go. And this will keep running. And as you can see, it's been a while since I was actually here, but because the Arboretums in particular are so slow, 1% per round of production, it takes forever for these things to produce anyway. So yeah, doing that automated is not actually going to throttle your production, which it usually does when it comes to games like this. Mostly because, you know, if you're gonna have to wait around, well, not necessarily wait around, but because things are producing so slow, buffering them and then just putting that buffer into the next part of the facility works. Now, there's a couple of things that I do recommend automating, like for example over here, I can put in the geodes over here that will get broken up, they will get then split into all the different geode breakers for all the different types, and then I can just grab these resources once again. Now, some of these resources actually need to go close by, like here, for example, I do need some volcanic soil for more of these, what other star flowers or something, stellar leaves, there we go. But I also need some of this volcanic ash, for example, in my other location, and this is where the teleporting comes in. So if you are not teleporting, then this is definitely not worth it. But yeah, for example, over here, I need some of that. Well, apparently I'm still stocked up on that, so this is probably not even gonna fit. But yeah, I am producing my copper seeds over here that I can then bring back and go back to my Arboretum. And as you can see, there's kind of like loops in here that you can then use to keep everything up. Because what I'm eventually trying to do is make some of those copper cuttings that I need. And I need a huge amount, by the way, of copper seeds for that. But again, this takes forever to produce. Now you can see I'm at 68%, so we are going to be done with that soon. But if I would have tried to automate all of this, it would have taken me far, far longer than it will take me now. Anyway, it takes a minute, but we have now completed 5 copper cuttings. They come in pieces of 5, so that's kind of nice. And that means we can go and turn in our quest. And this is going to give us access to a couple of interesting new recipes. Okay, so what's really interesting about the copper cutting is that it transforms back into copper sap and copper seeds. Now, we put in 500 copper seeds in order to make 5 copper cuttings, so it's not really a net positive in terms of copper seeds this way. However, the copper sap itself, you can also turn into copper seeds, and to be specific, one of them will turn into 8 copper seeds. So that means that in total over here, I will make over 200 copper seeds just from a single copper cutting, and that means that if you multiply that by 5, we're actually going to be net positive in copper seeds compared to how many we put in, as long as we also transform the copper sap back into copper seeds. But there's kind of an infinite loop right there. Of course, in order to make the copper cuttings, we also needed leaf knots, but those are super easy to make, so I'm going to consider those as free materials. So a setup something like this is going to yield me pretty much infinite seeds as well as that copper sap. Now, infinite is in given enough time, it will produce an infinite amount, assuming I keep feeding it those leaf knots. Now, as you can see, I've stacked this up with like something like 800 leaf knots already, so that is enough to produce this, well, 4 times over, which is going to take forever. So just in terms of amount of stuff, it's not that much. In terms of how long it will actually take to produce this, it's gonna take a while. Hours, that at least. Anyway, As you can see, I'm using the fuel that I'm using for the teleporter over here to actually fuel the furnace that is making the copper seeds out of the sap. And this should start backing up fairly soon because, as you can see, I have all of my seeds already completely filled up in the crates. I'm also still producing seeds, remember, so I'm not just relying on the seeds that are being produced locally. And that means I can also start working on the, how many? 500 saps I actually need in order to complete tier 9, at least one of the parts. Now, the last thing we are going to need is the ether segment, and in order to make those, we are going to need to make some apples. Because apples turn into, well, once we actually produce one of these apples, we can get the recipe that will turn our apples into apple parts, and those we need as well. Now, luckily, the liquid fertilizer is super easy to make, and I've already been mass producing ether seeds. So all I need to do is produce some more fire shrooms, some more stellar leaves, all of which I am already producing quite a lot of, and then I can get myself some liquid fertilizer. And just to prove my point on how much more efficient it is to set things up like this, I just have an alchemy lab here sitting producing some liquid fertilizer. It's been running for a little while now because I already set it up, and as you can see I have hundreds of that stuff waiting for me. So now all we need to do is actually, I don't know, probably build another arboretum. Yep, because we need to bring the seeds and the fertilizer. We're going to need 500 of each in order to actually make a single apple. Now, the seeds are going to be super easy because we were mass producing those. But as you can see, I actually already have enough liquid fertilizer for the first apple as well. So, all in all, this is not going to be that difficult. Alright, that's another arboretum up and running, and I have plenty of stockpiles here waiting for this to complete. So now all we need to do is wait for our first apple to be produced, then we can turn in this quest and we can start working on our ether segments as well as our copper sap, which is already running in the background. And I can speed that up a little bit by using the temperature regulator. Now this is basically an overpowered version of the cooler and heater, with the additional benefit that I can set it to either cooling or heating, and it does a lot more work. Now it doesn't actually need fuel, so that's a pretty big downside. But the nice thing is I can now overclock my arboretum over here, so it produces 50% faster than it did before. Well, actually, just a couple of rounds, and Houston, we have an apple. So let me grab that, and that means we can turn in the Botanical Alchemy quest level 2. And that, if I remember correctly, is one of the last 2 quests we need, actually. But it's going to allow us to make those apple parts. Okay, now this is interesting. I just got the last quest for tier 9 from the Divine Researcher, and finally he decides that it might be a good idea to give me access to those base support thingies that we need in order to build our special buildings. And he needs some more ether segments and copper sap for that. So basically the last 2 quests that we have both rely on producing a whole bunch of that stuff through the arboretums. Now, unlocking those special building locations, I mean, these are the pink things that we've had on the map from the beginning, is something that I really wish the game should have given you like way earlier in the game, or the game should have made it more important to actually use these things. Because as you can see, I'm pretty much not using any of those special locations anyway, so being able to build them myself is honestly not really a high priority. Because the only thing that requires these special locations are the shrines, or at least the version of that you can build yourself. But I've just been using the shrines that unlock the sparks themselves, and the only ones that you really need to produce in bulk are the early ones, because you need them for everything else. So I have been using a couple of those special locations in the beginning zone, but other than that, what I just have already been doing since pretty much the early to mid game is just go to a shrine, build up a couple of boxes there. As you can see, there's nothing much here. Dump a few hundred of the basic sparks in there, and then after an hour of play and just doing other stuff and being useful, you come back and you just pick up, 100 of those advanced sparks. And if you look at my inventory, just like 100 or so of these special sparks will last you so long that there's really no reason to completely automate those things. Honestly, I've barely been using a lot of the sparks that we've unlocked. Maybe I should have been, I don't know. But it doesn't really feel necessary. It kind of sums up a lot of the systems in this game. I really like the idea behind this game, but the execution could have been a little bit I don't know, bit more interesting, I think. Anyway, let's not complain. That means we simply need to produce a whole bunch more of that stuff. And that means the arboretums need to do a whole bunch more of work, and we need to just keep putting in a lot of resources. Okay then, it took a while, and honestly this is taking a little bit longer than I'd like, even though right now, for example, I have 4 of these feeders, all at 150% production rate, but still things take forever to produce. Anyway, I have 5 of these apples, so I can now start turning them, assuming of course I actually transport my items, which means I can now start turning them into their segments. There we go. We're also going to get some aether seeds out of that. Well, that's nice. They can go straight back into this production facility, but we need 100 of these aether segments. We're going to get 20 for every apple, so this should be exactly enough to complete the village expansion. Then we're going to need another 2 apples to complete the aetheric construction, and we will be completely done with tier 9. Alright, so let's see what we're gonna build this time, if we're even gonna build something at all. Well, let's see. The village has never seen better days, and for all that we have to thank you. You should keep enjoying yourself and having fun with those sparks of yours. I'll take care of the boring things in the village. Ah, okay, so... well, we're actually gonna build something. It felt like we weren't for a moment, but luckily we are. Okay, so let's see. We're actually not gonna go across the bridge this time around. We are building something over here. Okay, I guess we're gonna find out what that is. Okay, well, that looks kind of cool. Let's get the ether segment from over here as well. Oh, you actually have your own Stumpy Spark thingy and your own Handy Spark thingy now? Okay. Come here for a moment, my friend. I know you've always been grateful for all the exploring you've done in the name of science, but there are 2 more shrines and a large ancient ruin that you could look into. However, this corrupted ruin is an especially dangerous place, so I need you to be extra careful, okay? Okay, so let's see. We need to deliver a scrubby spark, sponges, and some stuff we already have in production. So the real question is, I guess, how do we make sponges? Well, I have a feeling that is where some of these new quests are going to come in, so this seems like a good moment to end this episode. This completed tier 9, and that means we only have a single tier to go. If you're still here, you're awesome, and I do hope to catch you in the next one.